Human beings are searching for the personal experience of reality. They are seeking to come to understand themselves, to find a reason for their own existence.
And so you go round and round and round, ever chasing the illusion that there is something outside yourself, outside your here and now, to be attained that will make things better.
No guru, no method, no teacher, and no nothing else either.
Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. After you have peeked behind the curtain and seen the celestial gears in motion, you are better able to alter your actions to achieve the results you desire. Every day, when we wake up, we rise from the ashes of our former selves. Every day, a new phoenix is born. What direction do you wish to guide your life today? And with that, I'd like to get into what I'm grateful for today. Today, I'm grateful for some of the difficult things that I've been going through. It has not been pleasant, it has not been fun, but also in my experience, it's these difficult times that recommit me personally to my path, and I'm sure other people might be in similar situations where when things get difficult, they find themselves deeper committed to their spiritual practice or deeper committed to their passions. And it really is kind of like, I want to say it was in the interview with Ronnie Landis, where it's like doing what you don't want to do, regardless of the fact that you don't want to do it, and just making yourself do it. And in some ways, I've been able to accomplish that. In some ways, I need to grow with that. But these past couple of weeks have been a good process in evaluating that. And now I'm going to get into today's tarot card, which is for February, I want to say it's the 8th. Yeah. I think I'd have that information handy when I'm going to tell you that something is for the day, but I don't. Okay, so the card is from the Tao Oracle, and it's 35, Progress. There's an old saying, in the bright light of day, all things become known. Circumstances are accelerating toward that illuminated zenith now. Zenith, the outlook brighter, and all sides point toward an increasingly more rapid progression of events. Being alert now to the subtle nuances of what is happening around you will help you stay self-contained and energetically supported by the steadily increasing wave of progress that characterizes this time. The positive effects of your endeavors will naturally and effortlessly multiply for one and all. Taking care of the business at hand helps you keep your feet on the ground in spite of your being in the limelight. This is not to say the sweetness of the moment should not be savored. There is no full stop in the journey of life. Rather, the journey itself is the goal. And here are the changes which are relative to the I Ching. And these lines, they go from the bottom to the top if you're curious or not unfamiliar. So this would be the second line from the bottom. Line 2, sometimes you find yourself in the position of the one who carries the wisdom of experience while those around you are struggling to master the ABCs. Enjoy the opportunity to share and be grateful that it has come your way. The only lesson for you right now is to give freely of what you have so that you create space in yourself to receive more. And the fourth line, everybody needs and is granted the space to make some mistakes. Without trials and errors, nobody would ever learn to walk or talk. But when the moment of truth comes and you realize that a mistake is a direct result of your own foolhardiness, it can be painfully embarrassing. Don't try to skip lightly over any feelings of humiliation you might experience as a result. And at the same time, don't wallow in self-blame. The lessons we learn most deeply are often those that we feel the most uncomfortable when we are learning them. And I find that both of those are really relative to my journey right now. I don't need to specifically get into why. Next, I'm going to get into a couple quotes, dive into the monologue of the episode, and then actually get into just shooting from the hip with everything. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. That was said by Carl Jung. To live a spiritual life, we must first find the courage to enter into the desert of loneliness and change it by gentle and persistent efforts into a garden of solitude. And that was said by Henri Nouwen. And I've titled this episode like Spiritual Truths, but I guess that's fine. Here's a little monologue. Spirituality has come to be a generic catch-all term that seemingly encompasses most beliefs outside of the common corral of mainstream religions. However, when we evaluate what commonly passes as spirituality, we find a pretty package that is empty. Many begin to examine the deeper meaning of existence, but stop short at spiritual materialism and fluffy feel-good phrases. It's my belief that to actually acquire any true spiritual gnosis, we have to dig in deep to the dark parts of our soul, the darkness of humanity and the darkness of the world. It's here in this darkness that our true seed of spirituality is planted and able to take firm root. With the little nature and nurture, we can pierce the surface of our souls and ascend towards the sun. So it's really funny to evaluate this because like this is where my journey started, and to look at my whole process personally of like an awakening or something, like awakening to some geopolitical things over 10 years ago now in the structure of how the world was. I've always been somewhat switched on, I would say. But then this real spiritual awakening, the deeper understanding of it occurring more so in recovery, not to say that I didn't have some spiritual awakening previously. But yeah, getting caught in like these fluffy pink clouds, as they say in the 12-step program that I'm in. And I find that a lot of people get stuck there. I did another episode on this kind of the Rainbow Valley or whatever, where people get caught up in all like this pretty stuff. And yeah, it's nice, but it's like spiritual junk food in a sense. Like, yeah, it might keep you spiritually full, but it's not like nutritious, I guess. And if it works for you, that's fine. That's one of the things that I want to throw out there. But like, and this is some dualistic stuff right here. Let me say that I'm aware of the hypocrisy about what I'm going to say. I do find that a lot of people, when they stay in the fluffy element of things, that they develop this spiritual narcissism or like vibrational snobs in some ways. Like, I can't hang out with these people because they're going to lower my vibe. This, that, and the other. And one of the things that I'm really learning on my own personal journey, again, personally, not saying this has to work for everybody or that it's absolute truth, is that those people that might be, as some would say, vibrationally lower, they could have answers that I need to move forward. And by being a vibrational snob, I'm limiting myself from it. There's this big tendency in spiritual communities to focus on certain belief structures, law of attraction, and like really just focusing on the good things. But there's so many inherent traps in that like, I mean, especially within communities who are, when you present a problem and then they present it as your thinking and actions of the problem obviously aren't aligned because law of attraction would have given it to you otherwise in some ways. And there's been times where I've asked that, like, why isn't this occurring in my life yet? And sometimes it just is what it is, but other times it's like, it's a dismissive in lots of ways to generally assume that people's presentation or understanding of the situation isn't correct and that you have to maintain this correct mentality indefinitely to receive what you want. The caveat to that being, at times, yes, you do need to maintain this attitude of um, confidence in what you're doing, but at the same time, becoming unconfident or addressing how you really feel about a situation and not plastering this mask of, well, everything's fallen to shit, but I feel great. Not plastering that mask on there is being authentic and healing. And here's an example of how, like, not finding that spiritual truth can be destructive. There was a time when I lived in the Florida Keys, and my intent was to quit my job and move down to Key West. Now, my rationalization was the universe has me. The universe is going to support me. I believe in this journey. So what I did is I just quit my job, loaded all my stuff up onto a bus, like my suitcase full of books and my guitar and my bongo drum or djembe or whatever it was. And I went down to Key West and I got drunk for a week, couldn't find a job, couldn't find an apartment, couldn't do anything. And people will say, well, that's not the universe's fault. And it's like, absolutely it isn't. I didn't do the work, but I maintain that attitude. And sometimes you have to do that work when the attitude isn't there. So then largely law of attraction falls down. Granted, if you're doing the work, there's going to be times where you have to put on the happy face and enjoy the work. There's going to be times where you don't want to put on the happy face and enjoy the work. All of that's fine. But when you make spirituality all rainbows and puppy dogs, you're shortchanging yourself. And it's not my experience, I guess. Maybe some people's lives have allowed them to have this thing where everything's all great, everything's okay, peachy keen. But for me, there's a lot of dark parts in my soul, I guess, that still need to be illuminated. And going into those parts of me is uncomfortable. It's sometimes frightening, and it doesn't have a definitive resolution inherent in it. So I think I've really gone onto that aspect enough of it. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on within this is like doing, following your dreams, because I mentioned the thing about Key West. And I think another area where a lot of people get hiccups, I know that I have had these hiccups before, is in regards to following their passion. And they'll be working a job that they hate and maintaining this attitude of, screw this job is bullshit, I hate this job, blah, 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 blah. This is what I want to do. So I'm going to quit this job and I'm just going to throw everything that I have into this dream job that I have. Then they become disillusioned after a short time as to why said dream job isn't actualizing in their reality. And this is my understanding of it, and I could be wrong. People with more information or more experience might have other opinions about it. But part of what makes these businesses sustainable and allows you to do that is somewhat the long-term persistence of it. Like, I have tried to do stuff similar to what I've been doing now for over the past year. Like, and every time that I tried that, when I didn't get instant recognition or things weren't instantly noticed, I gave up on my own dream. So I feel that a lot of people, they put this unnecessary pressure on their business. Well, this needs to be successful in order for me to survive now, because I've created this space or this position in my life where if I don't make money off of this, I'm screwed. And then if they have to return back to working a more traditional job, they feel that their dreams have failed, they're a failure, and that the whole dream is not worth pursuing because it's flawed. And in the reality, the only thing that might need reworked in order to achieve that dream is maintain some kind of realistic incomes, a stable income in some ways. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So your dream isn't so pressured to be successful. So you can develop it, so you can enjoy the process of it, not so you're attaching all this stress to it. I think really one of the last things that I want to talk about is, maybe not the last thing, the sense of spiritual narcissism that's rampant in spiritual communities as well. And again, it's something I personally fall into at times also. And it's something that I need to remember. I'm an authority on nobody's experience but my own. You could have a completely different experience and it still be just as valid as my own experience. But there's a lot of people that assume that other people need to replicate their beliefs or have the same understanding in order to achieve certain things. For example, within the vegan vegetarian community, there's this concept of if you eat meat, you're less than. And really, if you think people are less than, you're kind of less than, because you're missing the lesson in my experience. And I don't want to get into this whole debate about that. I actually personally want to work towards eating vegetarian more frequently, if not make the whole shift. I didn't used to acknowledge this because I never really experienced it, but I personally feel better when I'm eating more plant-based stuff. But it also doesn't make me any better than people that eat meat-based. It's more about my individual choice, and it doesn't make them less spiritual and me more spiritual. The other thing is like with drug users. Again, if you want to use drugs, that's fine. People that have listened to this podcast enough know that I don't choose to use any kind of substances anymore, with the exception of caffeine rather, and sugar, but I want to work those out eventually. Right now, the thing that I'm working out of using is nicotine. I'm actually on, I think this is day 4 of not smoking, which it had popped back up in my life, and now it's smoothing itself out with the thanks of my higher power. But yeah, people assume that like you need these substances to achieve these higher states of consciousness or these various things. And I used to believe that as well. But having been substance free for over 17 months now, I'm able to achieve similar states in some ways with a lot more clarity. And it's not like this ease of access. So there's an ability to take some kind of, I don't want to say pride, but sense of accomplishment, I guess, in it. And I think that there's this unknown spiritual materialism that's inherent in drug culture because they glorify these substances. And you can take of that what you will. I mean, again, if it works for you, it does. This is my opinion, and I'm not saying that it's correct. I'm just trying to underline some faulty logic, I guess, within spiritual community. But if you glorify this plant, it's materialism, and it's humorous to me. And this is something that I've practiced in my own life at times, where I talked about being so non-materialistic, but so much of my time was dedicated to a material. So it's something to think about. I would also say that there's this sense of just because you studied something or have a perception about another person's exploration of a topic, that you know more of it, and it's like this spiritual egomania. And again, it's something I've fallen into. All of these things are things that I've experienced, so I'm not removing myself from this discussion. It's just more of something that I've noticed. I'm down in it with everybody that I'm talking about. So, but recently I saw a Facebook post from somebody, and I'm not going to mention their name or specifically mention what community they were referring to, but they went through and they listed their perception of how all these people are marketing certain things. And this is ironic because I kind of had similar thoughts when I visited Sedona in some ways. But at the same time, they're unaware that they're projecting their own perception onto these situations and assuming that how they're receiving this information is lack of awareness or understanding or quality of these other people's abilities to offer this service. And it's like, that's not the case. Just like some people might assume that within the spiritual community, if you charge for healing, if you charge for tarot card reading, if you charge for spiritual services, you're not being authentic and you're not truly offering your gift. And that's one of the things, as somebody that reads tarot cards and somebody that wants to work on doing spiritual guidance and stuff like that, like being a spiritual coach, I would have to disagree with that. And it's not to say that I can't do discounted things, but in a sense, we exist in a culture, in a society where time is money. And if I'm offering my time and my services, there should be some kind of reciprocation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, but at the same time, I'm not being good to myself if I'm constantly giving and not receiving anything in return. And it's a pretty basic understanding of how things work in life, give, receive. And sure, that's great. I could give all these free readings, but at the same time, if I'm receiving good vibes, that's not going to pay my bill. And people could argue this, that, and the other. If that works for them, good. But for me, I'm going to do what I do. I offer a free tarot card a day. Sometimes I give people free readings. I do a lot of things of service to this community, I would say, without charging anything for it. So I think that people need to not worry so much and justify not having to pay for other people's services. I really do think that that's it now. I think that I've rambled long enough. I've mentioned before that I'm not going to utilize Patreon like other people do. Patreon, if you want to support this podcast so it can reach other people, you can donate stuff. You can buy stuff from my shop at thespiritualphoenix.com/shop. I have a book that's coming out of like 10 years of poetry from when I was homeless on the beach in Northern California till now. I really just want to offer you stuff of value for your money. I don't want to have to put some of the content behind a paywall. I don't want to actually create more content than what I'm doing because I'm busy enough as it is. So yeah, if you appreciate what I'm doing and you hope that it could reach more people, I would suggest buying something from my shop, buying a tarot reading, buying some spiritual guidance, buying my book, buying a shirt, buying a ring, buying a pendant, whatever, as well as leaving me a review on iTunes and sharing this podcast with your friends. All of those things will help me greatly, and it'll allow me to maintain not having to follow this pay model that so many people are doing now that I'm really unfond of, which is putting stuff behind a paywall. And I'm done rambling now. With that, love and light. I hope y'all have a blessed day, and I hope that this monologue like helped somebody in some way. It definitely helped me in evaluating other areas that I need to develop myself further. And I realize that it's somewhat paradoxical to be talking about how people are talking about people in spiritual communities. But I would say that the caveat is that I'm including myself in the broader sense of the conversation by saying I do this too. So I don't know. And with that, love and light.